The marble floor of the moon temple was so cold it stole the breath from my lungs. Or maybe that was the silence. The heavy, awful silence of hundreds of wolves watching me, waiting for my final shame. This was my 7th mating ceremony, my 7th walk to the center of the sacred circle, my 7th time offering my scent to the packs, only to have it thrown back in my face like something rotten. I, Alara, was the broken Omega. My bare feet, still sore from the rough journey to the temple, left faint smudges on the pristine white stone. I could hear the whispers, like rustling leaves filled with poison. Cursed, empty, the moon goddess turned her back on this one. They said my wolf was silent. They said my scent, a sharp, icy thing that smelled of frozen pine in starlight, was proof of a soul the goddess had forgotten to finish. The alpha officiating the ceremony, an old wolf named Borin, cleared his throat. The sound echoed in the vast, glittering hall. Ilara of the Grey Rock Pack, 7th and final presentation. My foster parents, alphas of Grey Rock, wouldn't even look at me from their seats. I had begged them. I had offered to leave, to live in the wilds with the other unmated ones, to never trouble them again. But pack law was clear. 7 ceremonies, 7 chances. After this, I would be declared eternally unclaimed, a ghost in pack society, a burden forever. The walk to the center dais was the longest of my life. My simple gray dress, patched and too short, was a stain among the silks and jewels of the gathered packs. I climbed the 3 steps, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I closed my eyes, and as the ancient rites demanded, I let my scent unfurl. It was always the same. Not the warm honey or summer flowers of a normal Omega. No, mine was a winter wind, a crackling, cold aura that made wolves shiver. I heard it then, the collective flinch, a wave of noses wrinkling, of subtle steps backward. My scent was a wall, a warning, a rejection in itself. Any wolf of status may step forward, Alphaborn announced, his voice already bored. He knew how this would end. The silence stretched. 1 second, 5, 10. I kept my eyes on a crack in the far wall, pleading with my own heart not to hope. Hope was a knife that always turned inward. Then, movement. A tall, handsome beta from the powerful Stonefang pack, Leo, moved through the crowd. He had a kind face. My foolish heart gave a single, painful leap. He walked up the steps, stopping before me. He leaned in, his nose near the scent glands on my neck. I saw the exact moment he truly smelled me. His kind eyes widened, then hardened. His lip curled, not in anger, but in pure, instinctive revulsion. He didn't speak to me. He turned to the crowd, his voice loud and clear. I step forward not to claim, but to spare this poor creature further delusion. The words were a physical blow. Her scent is an abomination. Her wolf is a void. To bind myself to this emptiness would be to curse my own bloodline. The kindest act is to let this ceremony end. Let her be what she clearly is meant to be. Nothing. The temple didn't erupt. It sighed. A sigh of agreement, of relief. My 7th rejection was complete. It was over. Alphaborn nodded, lifting his hand for the final decree. Ilara of Grey Rock, 7th presentation, 7th refusal. By the laws of the moon and the ancient pacts, you are hereby declared eternally The massive oak doors of the temple exploded inward, not with force, but with a presence, a pressure so vast and ancient it felt like the mountain itself had leaned into the room. Wolves cried out, dropping to their knees. The very air grew thick and heavy, vibrating with raw, untamed power. 3 figures stood in the shattered doorway, backlit by the full moon. They were identical in height and build, moving as one shadow in 3 forms. They wore dark, travel-stained leathers, and their eyes, all 6 of them, glowed with an unearthly silver light, like liquid moonlight held in a gaze. A stunned whisper tore through the temple. The lost princes! The 3 rulers of the legendary, isolated Nightfang Kingdom, sons of the last true Wolf King. They hadn't been seen beyond their borders in 50 years. They were myths, ghost stories. And they were staring directly at me. The one in the center took a single step into the hall, his silver eyes locked on mine. He inhaled deeply, and his entire body went still. A low, shuddering growl ripped from his chest, a sound of pure, undisputed possession that shook the crystal in the chandeliers. "Mine," he breathed. The word was soft, but it echoed in the absolute silence. The prince on the right was a blur. One moment he was at the door, the next he was at the base of my dais, his hand outstretched. His voice was quiet steel. "Come down from there." The third prince circled the edge of the crowd, his predatory gaze landing on Leo, the beta who had just condemned me. His voice was deceptively calm. "You, who gave you permission to speak to what is ours?" The world tilted. My knees buckled, but I never hit the cold marble. The center prince was there, his arms wrapping around me, lifting me as if I weighed nothing. He buried his face against my neck, inhaling again, and a deep rumbling purr vibrated through his chest and into mine. It was the opposite of every sound ever made about me. It was acceptance. 7 times they rejected you," he murmured, his voice for my ears alone. It was rough, like stones tumbling in a deep river. "Good. It means you were waiting for us." The prince holding me, his scent was like deep forest and crackling hearth fire, looked out over the cowering assembly. "This Omega's name is Alara. Her scent is not a curse. It is the mark of the Triune, a scent lost for 5 centuries, given only to the Omega meant to unite a triad bond." His silver eyes burned. "You called a diamond gravel. Your ignorance ends now." He looked down at me, his expression shifting from a terrifying authority to something softer, more bewildered. He said, "I'm Kale." He nodded to the prince who had offered his hand. "This is Rylan." His gaze flicked to the one circling Leo. "And that is our brother Soren. We are your mates, Ilara, and we have been searching for you for a very long time." Soren finally stopped his prowling, coming to stand with his brothers. He looked at me, his head tilted. "Your fear is a sharp scent in the air, little Omega. But tell me, is it fear of us?" His eyes scanned the sea of bowed heads. "Or fear of them?" I couldn't speak. I could only shake my head, a helpless gesture that meant everything and nothing. Kale's arms tightened around me. "It does not matter. The fear ends tonight." Rylan, the quiet one, finally spoke again, his hand still patiently outstretched. "We are leaving this place of small minds and cold hearts. Will you come with us?" I looked at his hand. I looked at the 3 impossible princes who called me theirs. I thought of 7 lifetimes of no. I thought of the word nothing. I placed my trembling hand in Rylan's. His fingers closed around me, warm and certain. And something deep inside my chest, something I believed was dead and empty, stirred. It uncurled, it lifted its head, and for the first time in my life, my wolf answered. Not with a sound, but with a feeling of home. The journey to the Nightfang Kingdom was a blur of dark forests and silent travel. The princes did not use a carriage. They moved through the night on foot with a speed that defied nature, Kale carrying me effortlessly against his chest. Their kingdom was not a place of sun-drenched fields. It was a realm of towering, mist-shrouded peaks, and their home was not a palace. It was a fortress carved directly into the side of the blackest mountain, a place called Grimhold. It looked less like a home and more like a weapon. Sharp spires pierced the low-hanging clouds. Walls thicker than ancient trees bore the scars of forgotten battles. No flags flew, no guards walked the parapets. It was silent, watchful, and utterly terrifying. We entered through a gate that groaned like a waking giant. The courtyard within was vast and empty, paved with the same dark stone. A lone figure awaited us, a woman with hair the color of iron and a spine as straight as a sword. Her name was Valeria, the steward of Grimhold. Her eyes, gray and sharp as flint, swept over me, taking in my torn dress, my dirty feet, my obvious terror. There was no pity in that gaze, only assessment and deep, profound disapproval. "The Omega's chambers are prepared in the east wing," she stated, her voice clipped. "I will have the healer attend her and assign her a maid." "No," I said, the word surprising even me. "No maid." Valeria's eyebrow arched, her gaze flicking to Kale, expecting him to overrule the silly, frightened girl. "She said no maid," Kale replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "She stays in the royal wing, with us." A flicker of something, shock, disdain, crossed Valeria's impassive face. "My prince, the protocols, the council." "The council can wait," Soren growled, finally releasing some of the tension from the journey. "She is our mate. She stays where we can protect her." Valeria gave a stiff bow. "As you command." She turned to leave, then paused. "The council, however, will not wait long. They have demanded an audience at first light. They are agitated by recent events." After she left, Rylan gently took my hand. "Come, you need to rest." They led me not to a dungeon, as I half expected, but to a set of rooms that took my breath away for a different reason. A large bedchamber with a window that looked out over a terrifying and beautiful abyss, a fireplace big enough to stand in, and a door, a simple wooden door in the far wall. "That connects to our chambers," Rylan said softly, following my gaze. "The bond, it needs closeness, especially now as it settles. Being too far apart will cause pain, for all of us." The bond, this invisible thread that had tied my soul to 3 strangers, I could feel it, a warm, humming presence in my chest. When they were near, it was a quiet song. The thought of them leaving made it ache like a bruise. Kale built a fire while Soren prowled the room's perimeter, checking the window, the door. Rylan guided me to sit by the hearth and knelt before me. He produced a jar of salve and began to carefully, tenderly clean the cuts on my feet. No one had ever touched me with such focused gentleness. "Why?" The question escaped me in a whisper. "Why me? You are princes. You could have anyone. Powerful Omegas. Trained ones. I am nothing." Kale stopped stoking the fire. Soren halted his pacing. Rylan's hands stilled on my foot. "You are not nothing," Kale said, his voice low. "You are Tetra, the triune Omega. There has only been one other in all of history. Her name was Queen Selene. She united 3 warring kingdoms and brought an age of peace." "They called her broken too, at first," Rylan added, resuming his gentle work. "They said she was barren, that her scent was wrong, until she found her triad, her kings." "And what happened to her?" I asked. Soren's voice was a dark shadow from across the room. "She was betrayed by wolves who feared her power, who could not understand a bond stronger than their politics. That betrayal led to a war that shattered the old world. Our kingdom, Grimhold, was built from its ashes to protect the next triune Omega, to wait for you." The weight of his words settled on me. I wasn't just an unexpected mate. I was a hope, a prophecy, a potential cause for war. The fear returned, colder than before. "I can't be her. I'm not a queen. I'm just Alara, the rejected one. Kale crossed the room and crouched in front of me, his silver eyes capturing mine. You are Alara, who survived 7 rejections, who stood in that temple and took their cruelty without breaking. That is a strength queens are made of. We do not need a symbol, Alara. We need you, your strength, your heart. That night, I slept in the massive, unfamiliar bed, and as Rylan predicted, the bond protested their absence. A low thrum of anxiety began to build in my chest. I tossed and turned. Then the connecting door opened. No one spoke. Kale took a chair by the fire. Rylan sat by the window. Soren leaned against the wall by my bed. Just their presence, their quiet breaths in the dark soothed the bond into a contented hum. I was safe. I was watched over. For the first time in my life, I fell asleep feeling not alone. I awoke to the sound of raised voices. They were muffled, coming from the prince's chamber beyond the connecting door. A liability, Kale. You brought an unknown, untrained Omega into the heart of Grimhold based on a feeling? She is not a liability. She is our fated mate, Kale replied, cold and final. The council sees a weak link, the daughter of no one, raised by a minor border pack, rejected by every alpha who smelled her. They see your judgment clouded by an ancient fairy tale. I slid out of bed, my feet no longer hurting on the cold stone. I crept to the door, pressing my ear to the wood. What they see is their own fear, Rylan, the calm voice, interjected. They have grown comfortable in our long isolation. Alara represents change, a connection to the outside world, a living, breathing reason for us to care about things beyond our mountains. And what of the Ashfords? Their former pack will not let this stand. Their prestige is tied to her failure. They will talk. They will sow doubt. Let them. Soren's growl was unmistakable. My teeth are excellent at ending doubts. I stumbled back from the door, my heart pounding. They were arguing. Because of me. The council saw me as a mistake. My old pack was now an enemy. I had exchanged the quiet misery of being a nobody for the dangerous spotlight of being somebody everyone hated. The door opened suddenly, and Kale stood there, his expression stormy. He saw my face, the fear undoubtedly plain to see. You heard. It wasn't a question. I nodded, wrapping my arms around me. He sighed, the anger draining from his posture, replaced by a weary tension. Their words are the rustling of leaves in the wind, meaningless noise. They're not wrong. I am a liability. I don't know your laws, your customs, your enemies. I bring you nothing but trouble. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to cradle my face. You bring us you. That is the only thing that has ever mattered. He searched my eyes. But you must choose to believe it. The bond can only do so much. The rest, the trust, the faith, that has to come from you. Later that day, Rylan found me wandering a lonely, high-walled garden within the fortress. He carried 2 wooden practice swords. What are those for? I asked. For you, he said, offering one. Soren believes in sharp teeth. I believe in a sharp mind. Kale believes in a strong heart. But sometimes a body needs to know how to defend the heart it carries. I stared at the sword. I don't know how to fight. Then you will learn, he said simply. Not to wage war, but to hold your ground, to show anyone who would try to move you that you cannot be moved. For an hour, he taught me basic stances, how to hold the sword, how to step. He was patient, correcting my grip with gentle hands, his touch always careful, always respectful. There were no kisses, no whispered promises, just the quiet concentration of a teacher and a student under a gray sky. Why does this matter to you? I asked, panting slightly from the effort. Rylan lowered his own practice sword. Because the world is not kind to things it does not understand. It tried to break you once. I will not let it try again without you having the means to answer back. It was the most he had ever said at once. His kindness was a different kind of strength than Kale's fire or Soren's ferocity. It was a deep, quiet river, and it began to wear away at the rock of my fear. Soren's lesson came unexpectedly that evening. I was in the fortress's vast, dusty library, trying to read histories I couldn't comprehend. He entered like a shadow, silent until he was right beside me. "You're reading it wrong," he said, my voice making me jump. I'm trying." "You're reading the words. You need to read the lies." He pointed a long finger at a passage about a famous treaty. "See this? It says, 'A mutual agreement for shared hunting grounds.' What it means is, we were too weak to take the grounds by force, so we pretended to be generous. History is written by the survivors, not the truthful." He spent the next hour teaching me to read faces, not books, to hear the tension in a voice that spoke smooth words, to see the flicker in an eye that betrayed a hidden thought. "They will try to trick you," he said, his silver eyes intense. "They will use pretty words as weapons. I am teaching you to see the blade before it cuts." Kale, Rylan, Soren. Fire, water, shadow. Each was giving me a piece of themselves, a tool for survival. They weren't just claiming me, they were arming me. The bond in my chest warmed, no longer just a connection, but a forge, and I was the metal being tempered. But the outside world would not wait. A week after my arrival, a messenger came, his face pale. He carried a scroll sealed with the crest of my former pack, the Grey Rock. It was addressed to me. My hand shook as I broke the seal. "To Elara," it began. "Congratulations on your fortunate bonding. The Grey Rock Pack rejoices in your elevated status. However, matters of your true lineage, long buried for your own protection, have come to light. We possess documents concerning your mother's origins. For the sake of truth and the stability of your new position, we must discuss them. We will arrive at Grimhold in 3 days' time." It was not a letter. It was a declaration of war. They weren't coming to congratulate me. They were coming to expose me, to tell the world and the hostile Night Fang Council that the Triune Omega was born of a secret shame. The ground felt unsteady beneath my feet. I had just found a fragile piece. Now the past I never knew was reaching its cold fingers into my new life, threatening to pull it all apart. The 3 days were a tense countdown. Grimhold, already a fortress of shadows, seemed to draw in on itself, becoming colder, quieter. The princes were constantly in meetings, their voices often rising behind closed doors. The bond thrummed with their shared anxiety, a constant low-grade ache in my own chest. Kale drilled me on royal protocol, how to stand, how to sit, how to use silence as a shield. "They will try to make you small," he said, his hands on my shoulders, straightening my posture. "You will show them you cannot be made so." Rylan worked with me on my control, over my scent, which still spikes with fear at unexpected moments, over my expression. "The face is the first battlefield," he murmured. "Do not let them see you flinch." Soren simply said, "Remember the lies. Whatever they say, whatever proof they show, it's a story designed to hurt. See the design." The morning the Grey Rock delegation arrived, a freezing rain lashed the mountains. I stood before the mirror in my chambers. Valeria had provided a gown of deep, stormy blue velvet, high-necked and long-sleeved. It was regal, it was armor. My reflection looked like a stranger, a pale, solemn queen with haunted eyes. The great hall of Grimhold was a cavernous space of black stone and banners, depicting howling wolves against a moonlit field. It was filled. Every member of the Night Fang Council was there, along with dozens of high-ranking warriors and stewards, all here to witness the spectacle. I walked in on Kale's arm, Rylan and Soren flanking us. The silence was heavier than any shout. Hundreds of eyes tracked my every step, weighing, judging, doubting. I felt the ghost of the temple floor on my bare feet, but I was not barefoot now, and I was not alone. We took our seats on a raised dais, 3 thrones for the princes, and one, slightly smaller, placed between Kale and Rylan, for me. I sat, my back not touching the cold stone of the chair. The great doors opened. In walked Alpha Boran from the temple, looking deeply uncomfortable, and behind him my former Alpha, Torin of Grey Rock, and his beta, Marcus, the man who had rejected me with such cruel finality. They did not look like conquerors. They looked nervous, but in Marcus's hands was a locked metal box. Prince Kale, Prince Rylan, Prince Soren, we come bearing uncomfortable truths. For the good of all, they must be heard. Speak your truth, Alpha Torin, Kale said, his voice devoid of warmth. But choose your words with care. You stand in the hall of our ancestors. Torin took a deep breath. Ilara was brought to us as a child of 3, orphaned by a rogue attack. We were told her parents were simple border wolves, their names lost. This was a mercy, for her true lineage is one of profound shame. He nodded to Marcus, who opened a box with a loud click. He withdrew a yellowed parchment. Her mother was not a border wolf. She was Lyra of the Blood Moon. A gasp, a collective gasp, ripped through the hall. Whispers of horror followed. Blood Moon. Traitors. Cursed.
My blood ran cold. The Blood Moon clan. Every child's nightmare story. A clan said to have practiced dark, forbidden magic, who betrayed the wolf kingdoms to a race of monstrous shifters centuries ago. They were wiped out. Their name was erased. To be descended from them was to be touched by ultimate evil. The Blood Moon line was exterminated for treason and black magic, Torin continued, his voice gaining confidence from the crowd's reaction. Lyra must have hidden, born a child in secret. Ilara carries that tainted blood. By the oldest laws, such a lineage is forbidden from bonding to royal lines. The bond, it must be an aberration, a trick of fate, or worse, a remnant of her clan's dark magic. The hall erupted. Council members stood, shouting. Some pointed at me, their faces masks of revulsion. The word abomination was hissed more than once. The careful composure I had built shattered. The old familiar shame rushed back in, a tidal wave threatening to drown me. They were right. I was wrong. I was cursed. I felt Kale's hand clamp down on mine, where it rested on the arm of the throne. His grip was iron. Rylan's calm presence at my other side was a wall against the chaos. Soren had risen to his feet, a silent, furious sentinel. But it was Kale's voice that cut through the din, not with a roar, but with a whisper that somehow silenced everyone. "You bring a piece of paper into my hall," he said, his silver eyes blazing, "and declare my fated mate a curse?" He stood, pulling me up with him. "The mark of the Triune is a gift from the moon goddess herself. It cannot be forged by magic, dark or light. It appears only on a soul of pure purpose." He turned his gaze on Torin. "You wish to speak of old laws. The oldest law is the law of the fated bond. It supersedes all others. But Goddess's will is the only will that matters here." "But the bloodline," a councilwoman cried. "What of my bloodline?" Soren snarled, stepping forward. "My great-grandsire drowned an entire valley in fire for disrespect. What of Rylan's? His ancestor tortured prisoners for information. What of Kale's? The first Nightfang king seized this mountain by slaughtering every soul who lived here." He swept his arm across the horrified council. "We are all descended from monsters and martyrs. You pick and choose which ghosts to fear based on your own convenience." Kale looked down at me. His eyes held not pity, but a fierce, unwavering belief. "Ilara," he said, his voice for me but carrying to every corner. "They say your blood is tainted by the past. I say your spirit is forged by it. You have carried this hidden weight alone your entire life, and yet you have remained kind. You have remained hopeful. That is not the mark of a cursed soul. That is the mark of a royal one." He turned back to the assembly. "The past is dead. We rule the present, and in the present, Ilara is our mate, marked by the goddess. The Blood Moon exile is hereby revoked, not for her mother's sake, for hers. because she has proven herself worthy of a new legacy." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "Anyone who challenges this, challenges the throne, challenges the moon goddess, challenges us." The absolute, terrifying finality in his tone left no room for argument. The Grey Rock delegation stood defeated, their weapon of paper and lies useless against the solid rock of the prince's conviction. Torin bowed his head, a broken man. They were escorted out, the locked box with its damning parchment taken from them. The council was dismissed in a stunned, shuffling silence. Back in the royal chambers, the adrenaline faded, and I began to shake. The truth was out. My mother was a daughter of the most hated clan in history. I was... Rylan wrapped a thick blanket around my shoulders. "Breathe, Alara." "How can you even look at me?" I whispered, tears finally falling. "My blood, it's evil." "Your blood is your blood. It pumps your heart. That heart is what matters." Kale knelt before me, wiping a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "You are not your ancestors. You are Alara, the girl who survived, the Omega we love. That is the only truth that exists for us." The bond in my chest, which had been trembling with fear and shame, suddenly flared, not with heat, but with a brilliant, golden light. It was a feeling of absolute acceptance, of belonging so deep it erased every no that had ever been spoken to me. In that moment, surrounded by my 3 princes in the Dak Fortress, I made a choice. I could let the old story of the Blood Moon define me, or I could help write a new one. I looked at Kale, at Rylan, at Soren. "I am not cursed," I said, my voice finding its strength. "I am chosen." And for the first time, I believed it. The days after the confrontation were strangely peaceful. The council, cowed by the prince's unified front, retreated into sullen silence. Grimhold continued its quiet, watchful existence, but within me, something was waking up. It started as a restlessness, a physical energy that hummed under my skin, making sleep difficult. The bond, which had been a warm thread, now felt like a live wire, buzzing with anticipation. I found myself seeking the prince's presence constantly, not just for comfort, but because being near them felt right in a way that went beyond emotion. It felt necessary, like breathing. Kale noticed it first. We were in the strategy room, and he was showing me maps of the kingdom. He stopped mid-sentence, his silver eyes narrowing as he looked at me. "Alara, your scent." I flinched instinctively. What's wrong with it? A slow, astonished smile spread across his face. Nothing is wrong. It's changing. It's softening. The winter wind, there's warmth underneath it now. The scent of the first thaw.
Rylan, entering the room with a tray of tea, paused. He inhaled deeply, and his usually calm expression shifted to one of awe. "By the moon," he breathed. "It's blending. I can smell the pine from the deep woods." He looked at Kale. "That's you." Soren walked in from the terrace, snow dusting his shoulders. He sniffed the air, his head tilting like a true wolf. "And stone, after rain. That's mine." His gaze landed on me, intense and searching. "And sunlight on still water. That's Rylan's." He took a step closer. "Your scent, it's weaving ours into it." The triune bond. It wasn't just a feeling. It was a physical, tangible change. I was becoming a part of them, and they of me on a fundamental level. That night, the restlessness became a pull, a deep, aching need that centered in my core. I tossed in my bed, the sheets tangling around me. The bond wasn't humming anymore. It was singing, a high, clear note of pure want. I felt too hot. My senses were strangely sharp. I could hear the whisper of ash falling in the fireplace in the next room, smell the unique scent of each prince through the walls. A soft whimper escaped me. It didn't sound human. The connecting door opened immediately. All three of them stood there, framed in the firelight from their room. They were shirtless, as if they too had been restless. Their eyes glowed in the dark, not with anger, but with a fierce, protective light. "Ilara," Cale said, his voice thick. "It's happening," Rylan stated, his hands clenched at his sides. "The bond is demanding completion, the first stage." "It's not a heat," Soren clarified quickly, seeing my panic. "Not like other Omegas. For a Triune, it's a calling. The bond needs to settle into its final shape. It needs proximity, true unity." He didn't mean that. I could see the struggle on their faces, a deep, primal need warring with a protective, conscious control. They were fighting their own instincts for me. "It hurts," I confessed, another whine building in my throat. The distance across the room felt like a canyon. "We know," Cale gritted out. "It hurts us too, a pulling in the chest, like part of us is over here, with you." "What do I do?" I whispered. "You let us help," Rylan said. He was the first to move, approaching the bed slowly as one would approach a skittish animal. "May we come closer?" I nodded, unable to speak. They moved as one. Cale sat on the edge of the bed, his large, warm hand covering both of mine. Rylan sat on my other side, his fingers gently brushing the hair from my damp forehead. Soren remained standing at the foot of the bed, a watchful guardian, but his presence poured into the bond, steady and strong. The moment they were near, the painful pulling eased. It was replaced by a flood of warmth, of rightness. The chaotic energy swirling inside me began to settle, to organize itself around their three presences. Cale's steadfast strength, Rylan's calming depth, Soren's sharp protectiveness. "It wants us to be a pack," muddled, understanding dawning. "Not just mates, a true, unified pack. Our minds, our spirits, in harmony." "How?" I asked. "We opened the bond," Soren said softly. "Willingly, completely. We let our wolves greet each other." I was terrified. My wolf had been a silent ghost my whole life. What if she didn't come? What if she was broken, as everyone said? "Trust her," Soren said, as if reading my thought. "Trust us." I closed my eyes. I stopped fighting the pull, the song, the need. I let go. I reached inward, past the fear, past the shame, to the quiet, lonely space where my wolf lived, and I called her. For a moment, nothing. Then a stirring, a feeling of lifting a head, of opening eyes that had been closed for a long time. She was not a monster. She was not a void. She was small and wary, and her fur was the color of moonlit snow. She was me. I felt her rise within me, and at the same moment I felt three other presences, not through my eyes, but through my soul. A massive wolf with fur like charred oak and eyes of molten silver. Cale. A powerful, sleek silver wolf, the color of a river stone, with calm, intelligent eyes. Soren. A lean, lethal wolf of shadow gray, with a watchful, penetrating gaze. My little snow wolf took a hesitant step forward in that internal space. The three princes' wolves did not advance. They waited. They lowered their great heads, a sign of respect, of offering. My wolf took another step, then another. She nosed Cale's giant paw. She brushed against Rylan's sturdy shoulder. She looked into Soren's sharp eyes. And then she did something miraculous. She tipped her head back, and she howled. It was a silent sound in the real world, but in the space of our bond, it was the most beautiful noise I had ever heard. Pure, clear, full of joy and finding and home. And one by one, the three princes' wolves lifted their heads and joined her, a quartet of howls weaving together in a harmony that shook the foundations of my soul. In the physical world, my body relaxed completely. The feverish need was gone, replaced by a deep, profound peace. The bond settled into place, no longer a connecting thread, but a solid, golden bridge between our four hearts. I opened my eyes. The princes were looking at me, their human eyes wide with wonder. Tears streamed down Ryland's cheeks. Soren's jaw was clenched with emotion. Kale's smile was brighter than the sun. "You found her," Kale said, his voice rough. "She's beautiful," Ryland said. Soren just reached out and very carefully touched a strand of my hair. "Welcome home, little wolf." We stayed like that for hours, not speaking, just existing in the incredible silence of a completed connection. The calling was over. The first, most vital step was done. We were a pack. As dawn tinged the sky, I finally slept, truly and deeply, and in my dreams, 4 wolves ran together under a full moon, their howls a promise of forever. Peace, it seemed, was a fragile thing in Grimhold. The bond's completion had changed everything for us, but for the outside world, the political game continued. The council, though silenced, was not satisfied. They watched me now with new eyes, not just as a cursed blood moon heiress, but a confirmed triune omega, a living symbol of the prince's absolute power. It made them nervous, and nervous wolves are dangerous wolves. Their next move was subtle. It came in the form of an invitation, beautifully scripted on heavy parchment. A royal hunt, it declared, to celebrate the strengthening of the royal bond and to introduce the triune omega to the traditions of the Nightfang kingdom. All ranking members of the court are invited. "It's a trap," Soren stated flatly, tossing the invitation onto the table in their war room. "Obviously," Ryland agreed, studying a map. "They want to see her in a traditional setting, to watch her fail or falter, to prove she doesn't belong in our world." "They want to see if she is weak," Kale said, his eyes on me. "Hunting is more than sport here. It is a test of spirit, of connection to the wild, of pack cohesion. They will be watching how we interact, how you handle yourself." My stomach clenched. I had never been on a hunt. In Grey Rock, Omega stayed behind, tending the hearth. The thought of riding, of chasing a beast, of the raw primal energy of it, terrified me. "I can't," I said quietly. "I'll embarrass you." Kale came to me, taking my hands. "You will not be hunting, not in the way they think. The royal hunt has another purpose. The Omega rides with the alphas, at the center. Your role is not to chase, but to call." "Call?" Ryland nodded. "A true triune omega, history says, has a connection to the wild that goes beyond the normal. She can sense the heart of the forest. She can guide the hunt, not to the weakest prey, but to the prey that needs culling, the sick, the old, the one whose time has come. It is an act of balance, of mercy, not just killing." "They don't expect you to do that," Soren said. "They expect you to sit there looking pretty and scared. So we will teach you." The next 2 days were a whirlwind. They taught me to ride a gentle, steady mare named Mist. They took me to the edge of the wild forests around Grimhold and simply had me sit and listen and feel. "Close your eyes," Ryland instructed, his voice a soothing murmur. "Don't listen with your ears. Listen with the bond. Feel the life around you, the heartbeat of the fox in its den, the weary sigh of the old stag, the frantic pulse of the rabbit." At first, I felt nothing but my own panic. Then, slowly, as I leaned into the new, solid bond with my princes, I began to sense it. A tapestry of life, woven into the land. I could feel the strong, vibrant threads, and I could feel the ones that were fading, frayed, ready to snap. The day of the hunt arrived, cold and bright. I was dressed in a warm forest green riding outfit. The entire court was there, mounted on impressive horses, clad in hunting leathers. Their eyes were like arrows as I took my place between Kale, Rylan, and Sorn at the head of the procession. We rode into the deep wood. The air was sharp with pine and anticipation. The hunters fanned out, but the princes held back with me at a small clearing. Lord Farron, the head of the most vocal faction on the council, trotted up and asked with a polite but mocking tone, "Will the Omega be offering a direction for the hunt today, or shall we rely on the hounds and our own noses?" This was the moment. I looked at Kale. He gave a barely perceptible nod. "Trust yourself." I closed my eyes, blocking out the sniggers of the watching courtiers. I reached for the bond, felt my 3 anchors there, solid and sure. Then I reached further into the forest's tapestry. The strong threads buzzed with energy, a herd of deer to the east, a boar to the north. But there, to the west, was a thread that pulsed slowly, painfully. An old wolf, a lone hunter, its spirit tired, its body failing. It was not a threat. It was just ready. I opened my eyes and pointed west, my voice clear. "There. Follow the stream west for half a mile. You will find an old timber wolf resting in a sun patch. His time is near. Offer him a swift, honorable end." Silence. Lord Farron's smirk faltered. He looked at the princes, then back at me. You can sense that?" "The Omega has spoken. The hunt will follow her call." A party was sent. The court waited, the silence now thick with tension. An hour later, the hunters returned. Their leader, a grizzled warrior, dismounted and bowed deeply, first to the princes, then, to everyone's shock, to me. The Omega's word was true. We found the old wolf exactly as she described. He did not run. He looked at us and bowed his head. It was done with honor. He held up a single grizzled fang, a hunter's trophy. "He thanks you for the mercy." A ripple of awe went through the assembled wolves. They looked at me now, not with disdain, but with a dawning, uneasy respect. The rest of the hunt was formality. We returned to Grimhold as the sun set. I was exhausted, my mind reeling from the strange, profound experience. But the council was not done. That evening, during the feast, Lord Farron approached again, this time with a she-wolf beside him, his daughter, Lyanna. She was stunning, a powerful alpha female with confident eyes. "My princes," Lord Farron said loudly, drawing the hall's attention, "my daughter, Lyanna, has long been a devoted follower and a skilled warrior. She has asked for the honor of being formally assigned as the Triune Omega's personal guard. For her, protection." It was a masterstroke, a way to get their eyes and ears directly next to me, to have one of their own in the heart of the royal family, to control me or report on me, or worse. I saw the flicker of anger in Kale's eyes, the tension in Ryland's shoulders. Soren's hand went to the gagger at his belt. I looked at Lyanna. She met my gaze, her expression unreadable. Was she a willing pawn in her father's game, or something more? Before any of the princes could refuse, which would look defensive, weak, I spoke. "I would be grateful for the company," I said, my voice calm. I saw surprise in Lyanna's eyes. "A personal guard is a wise suggestion. Thank you, Lord Farron." The howl buzzed. The princes looked at me, shocked. I gave them the smallest nod. "Trust me." Later, in private, Kale was furious. "Ilara, she's a spy. Her father is our biggest opponent on the council." "I know," I said, "but if we refuse, we look afraid. We look like we have something to hide. This way, we control the situation. She will be my guard. I will be her charge. Perhaps," I added, thinking of Soren's lessons, "not everything as it seems." I saw her eyes when her father spoke for her. There was resentment. Ryland considered this. "You want to turn their weapon against them." "I want to see who she really is," I said. "And having her close means we can watch her, too." Soren grunted, a sound of approval. "The student learns." The next morning, Liana reported for duty, clad in guard leathers, her posture rigid. "My lady," she said, with a curt bow. "Liana," I replied, offering a small smile. "Welcome. Would you like to walk with me in the garden? I find the morning air helps me think." As we walked in the frost-kissed garden, the silence between us was heavy. The game had begun. The hunt within the fortress walls was now underway, and the prey was not a tired old wolf, but the truth itself. Liana was a statue of dutiful silence for the first 3 days. She followed me everywhere, to the library, the gardens, my lessons with the princes. She was always 3 steps behind, her eyes scanning for threats, her expression a mask of perfect professional neutrality. She spoke only when spoken to, and her answers were short, precise, and revealed nothing. I decided to break the ice not with questions, but with actions. During a particularly grueling history lesson with Rylan, where I was struggling to remember the lineage of the 4th Night Fang King, I groaned and rubbed my temples. "I'm sorry, Rylan. The names are all swimming together." Liana, standing guard by the door, spoke without thinking. "King Orin the Stone-Hearted. He earned the name not for cruelty, but for enduring a 3-month siege without surrendering a single grain of wheat from our stores." Ryland and I both looked at her, surprised. She immediately flushed and snapped her mouth shut, staring straight ahead. "You know your history," Ryland said, his tone inviting rather than accusing. "It is a guard's duty to know the legacy she protects," Liana replied stiffly. "But the siege of Blackwater Gorge is not typically in the basic training manuals," Ryland pressed gently. "That's scholar-level detail." Liana said nothing, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Pride, quickly suppressed. The next day, during my riding lesson with Kale, Mist was being unusually skittish. As I tried to calm her, Liana stepped forward. "May I, my lady?" she asked. At my nod, she approached Mist, not from the front, but from the side, humming a low, tuneless song. She placed a hand on the mare's neck, and almost instantly the horse stilled, blowing out a soft breath. "She smells a fox den nearby. It's unsettling her." Kale watched, intrigued. "You have a way with beasts." "Animals are simpler than people, my prince," Liana said, stepping back. "Their intentions are clear." Slowly, carefully, I began to engage her. I asked her opinion on the best path for a walk. I asked if she thought the new envoy from the southern pack was trustworthy. She gave a very diplomatic, "His smile does not reach his eyes." I shared my frustration with the incredibly complicated embroidery Valeria insisted I learn. One afternoon, as we walked a lonely, high-wall path, a sudden gust of wind tore the carefully penned notes from my hands on wind patterns Rylan had asked me to study. They scattered like frightened birds towards the edge of the wall, threatening to sail over into the abyss. I cried out, but Liana moved. In a blur of motion, she darted and snatched, catching every single piece of parchment before they were lost. She handed them back to me, barely winded. "Thank you," I breathed, truly impressed. "That was incredible." A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips before vanishing. "It is my duty, my lady." "You enjoy it, the duty, the skill, not the spying." Her guard slammed back down. "I do not know what you mean." "I think you do," I said, stopping to look at her directly. "Your father forced this assignment on you, didn't he? To report on the silly, cursed Omega, to find weakness for the council to exploit." She looked away, her jaw tight. "My loyalty is to the crown." "Is it? Or is it to your father's ambition? What do you want, Liana?" She was silent for a long time, the only sound the wind whistling over the stone. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I wanted to be a border captain, to lead my own patrol, to protect the kingdom from real threats, not play politics in hallways." There it was, the resentment I had glimpsed. She was a warrior trapped in a spy's role. "I see a warrior," I said honestly. "I see someone who is incredibly good at her job. And I am tired of being a political piece. Perhaps we can help each other." She looked at me then, really looked at me, her gray eyes searching mine for deception. "How?" I said, "Be my guard in truth. Teach me what you can. How to move quietly, how to sense danger, how to throw a dagger straight." I smiled wryly. "And in return, I will be your reason to stay at the heart of the kingdom, where a talented warrior's skills might one day be needed for more than babysitting." It was a risk. She could report this conversation to her father, twisted into a plot. But Soren's lessons echoed in my mind. See the design. The design here was a daughter yearning for a purpose beyond her father's schemes. Liana stared at the distant mountains. "They say you can speak to the forest." "I can listen to it," I corrected. "Can you listen to people?" "I'm trying to, starting with you." She took a deep breath and gave a single, sharp nod. "Your first lesson: never turn your back on a door. Always know where the nearest weapon is. Even a dinner knife can be a weapon." And so a new alliance was forged in the cold mountain air. Not with oaths, but with a mutual understanding. She began to teach me in earnest, small things, subtle things. How to spot a concealed blade, how to use my smaller size as an advantage. She was a brilliant, ruthless teacher. One evening, after a particularly grueling session on pressure points, she stayed behind as I drank water. "My lady, Alara," she began, using my name for the first time, "there is something you should know, something the council is planning. My father, he has been meeting with the envoy from the Sunfall Pack, in secret." The Sunfall Pack. They were a powerful, aggressive southern pack who had long coveted Nightfang's mountain passes. "What are they planning?" I asked, my blood turning cold. "I don't know the details," Liana knitted, "but it involves you. They don't just want to discredit you. They think your bond, your triune status, is a key. They believe if they can break the bond or control you, they can control the princes or break the kingdom apart from within." A spy had just become my first true ally in the court, and she had brought a warning. The game was no longer about reputation. It was about survival. The shadows in Grimhold were deepening, and they were plotting not just against me, but against everything the princes held dear. The peace was over. The real war was about to begin. The information from Liana was a cold stone in my stomach. I told the princes immediately in the privacy of their strategy room. Kale's face turned to granite. Ryland's calm evaporated into sharp focus. Soren simply smiled, a terrifying, predatory expression. Sunfall. Vultures. They've been waiting for a crack in our walls for generations. They see Alara as that crack. Control the Omega, influence the bond, destabilize the triad, the kingdom falls into chaos, ripe for Sunfall to pick apart. "We need to know their plan," Soren stated. "Liana's father, Lord Farron, he's the key. He's the bridge between the discontented council and the outside enemy." "Confronting him without proof is useless," Ryland countered. "He will deny it. It will look like we are persecuting a loyal council member for disagreeing with us." I listened, the bond humming with their shared tension and my own fear. Then an idea, born from my time with Liana and Soren's lessons on lies, formed. "What if we don't confront him?" I said quietly. 3 pairs of silver eyes turned to me. "What if we let them think their plan is working? Liana said they want to control me, to break the bond. What if I appear to be weakening?" Kale frowned. "That is too dangerous, Alara." "Hear her out," Ryland urged, his strategist's mind intrigued. "We use the bond. We know its true strength, but they don't. What if the bond seems to become a burden? What if I seem distressed by it, withdrawn? They might move faster, make a mistake. They might try to approach me, to offer help or a way out, and we will be watching." Soren's terrifying smile returned. "A trap. Bait the hook with the very thing they want." It was a risk, a huge one. We would have to pretend to be at odds, to have tension between us. We would have to lie to our entire court. The bond, so new and beautiful, would have to be hidden behind a mask of strain, but the alternative was waiting for Sunfall's unknown strike. We agreed. The performance began the next day. At the morning court assembly, I arrived looking pale and tired. I flinched when Cale reached out to guide me to my seat. I sat stiffly, not looking at any of them. The court noticed. Whispers started. Cale played his part, his expression growing increasingly frustrated and concerned. Rylan tried to engage me in quiet conversation, and I gave only monosyllabic answers before turning away. Soren just glowered, the picture of a prince whose mate was causing problems. We kept up the act in private, too, speaking in hushed, tense tones when we knew servants or spies might be listening. Only in the deepest silence of the night, behind locked doors, did we drop the masks, holding each other, reinforcing our true bond, reminding ourselves it was all a lie. It was exhausting. The bond itself protested the fake discord, aching with a confused melancholy. But we endured. A week into the charade, the first move came, not from Farron, but from an unexpected quarter. Lady Isolde, a senior council member known for her sharp tongue, but also her unwavering, fussy loyalty to tradition. She requested a private audience with me. In my solar, with Liana standing guard, her presence now a comfort, not a threat, Lady Isolde got straight to the point. "My dear, the court talks. They say the bond is difficult for you, that the primal nature of a triad is too much for a gently raised omega." Her tone was not unkind, but probing. I looked down at my hands, letting my shoulders slump. "It is overwhelming at times, my lady. So many feelings, not all my own. It's hard to find where I end and they begin." Isolde nodded sympathetically. "The old texts speak of this. The triune bond is a flood. Some omegas need anchors, stabilizing rituals. There are herbs, teas, practices to help an omega fortify her own spirit within the bond." My heart beat faster. Was this the offer? A poisoned cure? What kind of practices? Oh, simple things. Meditation in the moon chapel, brews of silverleaf and dawnroot. Perfectly harmless. They promote mental clarity. She leaned forward. "I could have my personal healer prepare them for you. Discreetly, of course, to help you find your balance." It sounded benign. Too benign. I thanked her and said I would consider it. After she left, I immediately told the princes. "Isolde is a traditionalist, not a traitor," Rylan muzzed, "but she is easily used. If someone suggested this to her as a way to help the unstable omega, she would see it as her duty." "The herbs," Cale said. "We have our own healer check them. If they are tampered with—" We had the tea Isolde sent over analyzed. Our healer, a wizened old wolf named Garin, sniffed the dried leaves. Silverleaf, dawnroot, and frostbane. Soren's eyes turned to ice. Frostbane. It suppresses emotion. It dulls the senses. In small doses, it would make an omega seem calm, detached. In larger doses, it could sever the emotional threads of a bond, make her pliable, suggestible. This was it, the first concrete move. They weren't trying to kill me, they were trying to turn me into a puppet. We decided to play along. Under Garen's supervision, I would drink a harmless look-alike tea, and I would gradually act more stable, but also more distant, cooler towards the princes, more receptive to outside advice. The next phase of the trap was set. We were letting the snake think it was slithering unseen right into our home. The one who took the bait, finally, was Lord Farron himself. He approached me after a music recital as I stood alone on a balcony pretending to find solace in the cold air. "The mountain air is clarifying, is it not, my lady?" he said, joining me. "It is, Lord Farron. I am glad to see you looking more yourself. The bond with 3 such powerful alphas is a heavy crown. Not every omega is suited for it." He sighed, a false sound of concern. "It pains me to see our princes distracted. Their focus should be on the kingdom, on threats like the Sunfall pack who grow bolder by the day. There it was, the hook. Sunfall? I asked, feigning ignorance. Savages, Farron said dismissively, but cunning. They spread lies. They say the triune bond is a weakness, that they make our princes vulnerable, that an omega of uncertain lineage is a target. It must be a terrible burden, knowing you are the reason our kingdom is perceived as weak. I let a flicker of fear show in my eyes. What can be done? He lowered his voice. There are those even within Sunfall who seek peace, who understand that a strong, unified Night Fang is best for everyone. But they need a sign, a gesture of stability. If the bond were less volatile, if the Omega were seen as a source of strength, not division, he let the idea hang. Sometimes, to save a kingdom, difficult choices must be made, new alliances formed. He was offering me a way out, a secret alliance with Sunfall, brokered by him to stabilize my position and, in reality, make me their pawn. He was asking me to betray my mates. The anger that surged in me was so real I didn't have to fake my trembling hands. I looked down, as if considering his treasonous words. I need to think. Of course, he said smoothly, placing a fatherly hand on my shoulder. Liana, watching from the doorway, tensed. Think on what is best for the kingdom, for everyone. He left me on the balcony, the winter wind suddenly feeling filthy against my skin. We had him. He had revealed himself. He had offered treason. We had our proof. But as I went to tell the princes, a chilling thought occurred. Farron was a council lord, not a warrior. He was the inside man. But who was his contact in Sunfall? And what was their real plan? Turning me into a puppet was one thing, but how did they intend to use that to bring down the mighty Night Fang kingdom? The snare had caught one wolf, but a larger, more dangerous predator was still lurking in the shadows, and we still didn't know its teeth. With Farron's treasonous offer hanging in the air, we had to move quickly. We couldn't arrest him yet, not without revealing we had been acting, and not without knowing the full extent of Sunfall's plan. We needed him to lead us to his contact. Soren took charge of the surveillance. Using skills he rarely spoke of, he and a few utterly loyal guards began watching Farron's every move. They tracked his messengers, listened at his windows, became ghosts in his shadow. I continued the act, appearing increasingly troubled but receptive. I sent a vague, non-committal note to Farron, saying I was considering the kingdom's needs. It was enough to keep him hopeful, to make him confident. The strain of the deception was wearing on all of us. The bond, so bright and sure, felt clouded by the constant lies. At night, we held each other tighter, whispering truths to reinforce what was real. "I love you," Cale would murmur into my hair. "You are our heart," Rylan would say, his hand over mine. "Mine," Soren would simply growl, a word filled with a possession that was about protection, not ownership. 5 nights after the balcony conversation, Soren slipped into my chambers, his eyes alight with grim triumph. He's making his move. He sent a coded message via a merchant caravan heading south, to the Sunfall border. "We intercept it?" asked Ryland. "No," Cale decided. "We let it through, but we replace its contents. We need to know who it's for, and we need to send a message of our own." Their plan was daring. They deciphered Farron's code, a simple cipher based on an old trading ledger. The message read, "The blossom is pliable, frost takes root, ready the soil for the new vine, await the sign of the broken moon." "The broken moon," Ryland said. "That must be a signal, an event." "The lunar eclipse," I realized. "In 3 nights, the moon will look cracked, broken in the sky." It was perfect, an astronomical event everyone would see, the perfect cover for a covert action. Cale's jaw was set. We rewrite the message. We tell Sunfall that the blossom is ready, that the new vine, their agent, should come to Grimhold under cover of the eclipse festivals, that the Omega will meet them at the old watchtower on the eastern wall at midnight. "You're inviting the enemy into the fortress?" I breathed. "We're drawing the poison from the wound," Soren corrected. "Let the snake come to us. We will be waiting." The rewritten message was sent. The trap was now baited with the promise of me ready to betray my princes. The next 3 days were an agony of waiting. The entire fortress began preparations for the Eclipse Festival, a traditional night of storytelling and reflection, the perfect chaos for a secret meeting. The night of the eclipse arrived, cold and clear. The moon rose full and brilliant over the black peaks. As the night deepened, a slow, creeping shadow began to bite into its side. The broken moon. I was dressed in a dark, heavy cloak. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Kale kissed my forehead, his touch lingering. "You do not have to do this. We can take them as soon as they arrive." "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I started this. I need to see it through, and I need them to say the words, to confirm everything before you strike." Rylan squeezed my hand. "Lyanna will be in the shadows of the tower. We will be on the ramparts above. You are never out of our sight, out of our reach." Soren simply pressed a small, sharp dagger into my palm, just in case. The old watchtower was a crumbling stone cylinder on the outermost wall. I stood inside its hollow shell, the broken moon casting eerie, shifting light through the empty window arches. The wind moaned through the stones. Right at midnight, a figure cloaked in black slipped through the tower entrance. He was tall, moving with a warrior's grace. He pushed back his hood. He wasn't a Sunfall wolf. I'd seen his portrait in the gallery. He was Kale, Rylan, and Soren's uncle, Orion, the brother of their long-dead father, the prince who had vanished decades ago, believed dead in a border skirmish. My breath froze in my lungs. "Uncle?" The whisper was torn from me. Orion's smile was thin, humorless. "You are the Triune, the key to my nephew's power." His voice was like rustling dead leaves. "I watched from the shadows for years, waiting for their bond, waiting for their one vulnerability, and then you appeared, a perfect fragile key." "You're working with Sunfall? Against your own family?"
"Sunfall are tools," he scoffed. "Promises of land and titles. My family abandoned me. My brother, the king, chose his sons over me, sent me to die in a worthless border. But I didn't die. I learned. I planned." His silver eyes, so like his nephew's, glinted with madness. "The triune bond is the greatest power our kind has ever known. But it has a weakness. If the Omega is killed by one of her bonded trio, the shock shatters the bond and drives the survivors mad. They destroy each other. The kingdom falls." Horror washed over me, cold and sickening. That was the real plan. Not to control me, to use me as a trigger for a murder-suicide that would wipe out the royal line. "Pharaon was to get you to take the Frostbane," he continued casually, "to make you suggestible. Then, during the eclipse, I would meet you, and you, drugged and pliable, would be given a simple task. Go to your beloved Kale, tell him his brothers were in danger from me on the eastern wall. He would rush out, frantic. I would be waiting. I would kill you in front of him, make it look like his own rage, his protective instinct, had done the deed in the confusion." He smiled. "A tragedy. The unstable Omega, the grieving prince who killed his mate. His brothers would turn on him, the bond would fracture, the kingdom would tear itself apart. And I would step from the shadows, the last sane royal, to pick up the pieces with Sunfall's grateful assistance." It was monstrous. It was brilliant. And it had almost worked. "But you're not drugged, are you?" Orion said, taking a step closer, sniffing the air. "You've been clever, playing a game. But the game is over, little Omega." He lunged. But I was not the helpless girl from the temple. I dropped into the stance Liana had taught me, sidestepping his grab. I didn't try to fight him. I screamed, a raw, piercing sound. Now! Shadows detached from the walls. Liana was first, her sword clashing against Orion's drawn dagger. Then Kale, Rylan, and Soren poured into the tower, their faces masks of furious betrayal. "Uncle!" Kale roared. The fight was short and brutal. Orion was skilled, but he was one against 4 of the kingdom's best warriors, filled with the righteous fury of his betrayal. He was disarmed, forced to his knees. He looked up at his nephews, not with remorse, but with bitter hatred. "You have the crown. You have the bond. You have everything that was mine by right." "You have nothing," Rylan said, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. "Not even your honor." As the guards took Orion away, Kale pulled me into a crushing embrace, his body trembling. "You're safe. Moon Goddess, you're safe." The broken moon began to pass, its shadow sliding away, revealing the whole silver orb once more. The eclipse was over. The shadow in our kingdom had been dragged into the light. We had the mastermind. We had the proof. The conspiracy was broken. But as we walked back to the main keep, a new fear took root. Orion had been waiting for decades. His plan was intricate, patient. Were there others? Were there more shadows waiting for their moment? The triune bond among us sang with relief and love, but also with a new, steely resolve. We had faced the enemy within. We were stronger for it. But the world outside was still full of wolves like Sunfall, waiting for weakness. We had won the battle, but the war for our future was just beginning. The days following Orion's capture were a whirlwind of grim justice and fragile rebuilding. The traitor prince was tried before the full council. His confession, coupled with the intercepted messages and Pharaon's terrified testimony, laid the conspiracy bare. Lord Pharaon, exposed as a gullible pawn, was stripped of his titles and exiled. The web was torn apart. The atmosphere in Grimhold shifted. The doubt, the whispers, the sideways glances, they didn't vanish overnight, but they were replaced by a wary, deepening respect. The court had seen their prince's strength in unity, and they had seen their Omega not shatter under pressure, but help spring the trap that saved the kingdom. Yet a formal cloud remained. I was their mate by bond and by heart, but not by law. The council, chastened and fearful, nevertheless clung to tradition. A royal mate required a formal recognition ceremony under the full moon, a public magical binding of my soul not just to the princes, but to the land itself, to the spirit of Nightfang. It was the final step, the one that would make me irrevocably their queen. The pressure was immense. The ceremony was ancient and complex. It required the Omega to open her spirit completely to call upon the ancestral magic of the land and have it answer. If the land rejected me, the bond theoretically could survive, but my place as queen would forever be contested. "It is a formality," Kale insisted, holding me the night before the ceremony. "The land has already spoken. It gave us you." "But what if it doesn't answer my call?" I whispered, the old fear of being fundamentally wrong creeping back. "What if the blood moon taint?" "Stop," Rylan said firmly, taking my hand. "You are not a taint. You are a bridge between a dark past and a bright future. The land knows this." Soren simply pointed out the window at the brilliant full moon. "That is your witness, not the dusty old wolves on the council. The moon goddess. She doesn't make mistakes." The ceremony was held at the highest point of Grimhold, the Starfall altar, an open platform of ancient stone that seemed to touch the sky. The entire kingdom seemed to be below, a sea of upturned faces, illuminated by torchlight. The 3 princes stood at the points of a large triangle carved into the stone floor. I stood in the center, clad in a simple gown of white silver, my bare feet on the cold rock. The High Elder began the chant. It was a song in the old tongue, calling to the mountain, to the wind, to the blood in the soil, to the wolves who had come before. My part was to stand and listen, and when the call came, to answer.
The chant rose, swirling around me. I felt the bond with my prince's flare, a triangle of brilliant silver light connecting them on the spiritual plane. They were my anchors, my home. The elder's voice reached a crescendo. Let the land hear the heart of the one who would be its queen. Let the spirit of Nightfang answer. Silence. Absolute breathless silence. I closed my eyes. I thought not of being a queen, or a triune, or a blood moon heiress. I thought of Alara, the girl who loved the silence of the forest, who found peace in the first snowfall, who loved 3 princes with a heart that had learned how to hope. I thought of my small, snow-white wolf, and of the 3 mighty wolves who ran beside her. I opened my heart, not to demand, but to offer my love for this strange, harsh, beautiful kingdom, my loyalty to its people, my promise to protect it as it had become my sanctuary. I didn't speak. I simply was. And I sent that feeling, that essence of who I was, down through the soles of my feet, into the heart of the mountain. For a moment, nothing. Then, a vibration, a deep, resonant hum that rose from the stone, up through my legs, into my bones. The carved triangle on the floor began to glow with a soft blue-white light. The light traveled along the lines, connecting Kale, Rylan, and Soren, then flowed inward towards me. Gasps rose from the crowd. The light reached my feet and climbed, a gentle, cool fire that enveloped me completely. It didn't burn. It hummed with recognition, with welcome. In my mind's eye, I saw not just the mountain, but the whole kingdom, the forests, the rivers, the hidden valleys. I felt its history, its pain, its strength, and I felt it accept mine. The light burst outward from me in a silent, expanding ring of shimmering energy that washed over the entire summit, making every torch flare bright for an instant. Then it faded, sinking back into the stone, leaving me standing there feeling cleaner, lighter, and more connected than I had ever felt. The silence was profound. Then the High Elder, tears streaming down her wrinkled face, raised her arms. The land has spoken. Her voice cracked with emotion. It has recognized and accepted. All hail Alara, Triune Omega, Queen of Nightfang.
The sound that erupted from thousands of throats was not a polite cheer. It was a roar, a unified, primal howl of acceptance that shook the very stars. Wolves dropped to their knees, not in fear, but in allegiance. The council bowed their heads, the last resistance crumbling in the face of pure, magical truth. Kale, Rylan, and Soren broke from their positions, converging on me. There were no words. Their silver eyes shone with a love and pride so fierce it stole my breath. They didn't kiss me. They surrounded me, their hands on my shoulders, my arms, a living barrier of love and protection. The bond between us was no longer just gold. It was woven with the blue-white light of the kingdom itself. We were one. We were home. We were complete. The feast that night was unlike anything Grimhold had ever seen. It was not a stuffy political event. It was a celebration. Music played, not formal court tunes, but the lively, pounding folk music of the mountain people. For the first time, I danced, with Kale, who was surprisingly graceful, with Rylan, who led with gentle assurance, even with Soren, who moved with a predatory elegance that made me laugh. I saw Liana across the hall, speaking earnestly with Kale's chief general. She caught my eye and gave a sharp, respectful nod, a promise of a new duty, a real one. Later, on a quiet balcony overlooking the lit-up kingdom, the 4 of us stood together. "It is done," Rylan said, content. "It is just beginning," Kale corrected, pulling me closer to his side. Soren looked out at the dark forests. "Sunfall will have heard. They will know their plot failed. They will know our queen is recognized. They will be angry." "Let them be angry," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "We are not afraid of the shadows anymore."
not outside, and not within. I looked at my 3 princes, my mates, my pack. The rejected girl was gone. In her place stood a queen bonded to her kingdom and to the 3 hearts that had taught her how to love, how to fight, and how to belong. The moon shone down whole and unbroken on a kingdom finally united. Our story, our happy ending, was no longer a dream. It was the first page of a new legend.